The remains of Cuba's longtime leader Fidel Castro were to be cremated today, hours after his death last night at the age of 90. The communist Caribbean nation Castro ruled for nearly half a century is observing 9 days of mourning before state funeral Sunday, December 4th. Castro's ashes will be buried in the city of Santiago after a 4-day procession through the country. Castro's death was announced by his 85-year-old brother Raul, who plans to retire as president in 2018 to be replaced by Cuba's vice president. Scott Pelley looks back at the bearded revolutionary who survived a crippling U.S. trade embargo and possibly hundreds of assassination plots.
He was the revolutionary leader who put Cuba on the world stage and made himself a world player, the communist adversary for 10 U.S. presidents. For nearly 5 decades, he wore the trademark beard and army fatigues, giving his fiery speeches against what he called the evils of imperialism.
The last battle will be fought in the capital. You can be sure.
In the 1950s, Castro led the overthrow of Cuban dictator Fulgencio Batista. After victory in 1959, he appeared on Edward R. Murrow's Person to Person, a rebel in pajamas.
Tell me, Fidel Castro, are you concerned at all about the communist influence in Cuba?
Oh, I am not worried because really there is not threat about communism here in Cuba.
Castro executed former Batista officials and began to nationalize American-owned property. The U.S. broke off relations and imposed a trade embargo. In 1961, President Kennedy authorized a force of CIA-trained Cuban exiles to try to overthrow Castro. The invaders were crushed as they waded ashore at the Bay of Pigs. Castro embraced communism and moved closer to the Soviet Union.
Is the CBS News Extra.
In 1962, the U.S. found evidence of Soviet nuclear missiles in Cuba.
I have directed the armed forces to prepare for any eventuality.
The nuclear clock ticked down and then stopped. The Soviets agreed to remove the missiles. In exchange, the U.S. promised not to invade Cuba. Castro's Cuba is a land of contradictions. It has free medical care and its literacy rate is among the world's highest. But political opposition is suppressed and the economy is a disaster. Those antique cars on shabby roads became as much a symbol of Cuban life as cigars or music. Twice, Castro unleashed a mass exodus of Cuban refugees onto U.S. shores. And with the decline of the Soviet Union and its support, Cuba faced economic ruin in the 1990s, forcing Castro to encourage tourism and foreign investment. In 1998, Castro invited Pope John Paul II to visit Cuba and reinstated Christmas as an official holiday. Castro once told CBS News how he wanted to be remembered.
That he was a socialist. That Castro wanted a more egalitarian society, a society as many other men has dreamed of in the past.
Cristo entre ellos.
Jesus among them.
In July 2006, Castro had intestinal surgery and announced a temporary transfer of power to his brother Raul. The transition became permanent as Castro's health declined and the fiery revolutionary faded from public view. Today, the last historic political figure of the Cold War is gone. Scott Pelley, CBS News, New York.